And the mandibular molars, they show a progressive decrease in size the more posterior the tooth. Is this the same as the maxillary molars? They decrease in size the more posterior they go. Is the first maxillary molar bigger than the second maxillary molar? Yes. And the mandibular molars, the crowns are wider mesiodistally than buccolingually. Was this the same as the maxillary molars? Do you remember? Does anyone remember?
Like you mean as they move along, or just?
Yeah, are the crowns were the crowns of the maxillary molars wider mesiodistally than buccolingually? Were they the same? Were they different than the mandibular?
No, they were also, yeah,
The maxillary molars were broad mesiodistally and buccolingually, but they were slightly wider buccolingually than mesiodistally. So, now the mandibular molars have only two roots, one mesial and one distal. What other tooth in the mouth has two roots? Do you remember? First premolar. Good. Very good. Now, were the roots of those maxillary first premolar buccolingual or mesiodistal?
That's one way to remember.
Now, the mandibular first molars have 5 functional cusps, and it's the only mandibular molar with 5 cusps. And those 5 cusps would be the mesiobuccal cusp, the distobuccal cusp, the distal cusp, the mesiolingual cusp, and the distolingual cusp. And the mandibular first molar is wider mesiodistally than buccolingually. So basically it's wider this way than it is from the buccal to the lingual. So it would be narrower from the buccal to the lingual. It's also the widest tooth in the mouth. Now when you look at the mandibular first molar from the buccal view, the mesial outline is slightly concave from contact cervically, and it's convex from the contact occlusally. So what that means is the mesial profile of the crown, it's convex at the middle and the occlusal third, and the cervical third is concave. And then the distal outline is more rounded at the occlusal, and it's straight to slightly convex from the contact cervically. The occlusal outline, it's wider than the cervical outline. There are three portions, which is the mesial-buccal cusp, the distal buccal cusp, and the distal cusp. And then there are the two grooves, the buccal groove and the distal buccal groove.
Could you repeat the three portions?
Sure. It would be the mesial-buccal cusp, the distal buccal cusp, and the distal cusp. So it would be the mesial-buccal cusp, the distal buccal cusp, and the distal cusp. And this would be the mesial-buccal groove, and that would be the distal buccal groove. Now the distal buccal cusp, it's lower and it's sharper. And the mesial-buccal and the distal buccal cusps are more blunt. Now also when you look at the tooth from the buccal side, the buccal groove extends halfway down occlusogingivally, and it's slightly mesial to the center, and it usually terminates in a pit, and it may split into two short angular grooves. Now if I were to show you that on a diagram, another diagram. You can see that right here, the mesial-buccal developmental groove, and this is the buccal pit right here. And this would be the distal buccal developmental groove. This would be the mesial-buccal cusp, the distal buccal cusp, and the distal cusp.
Excuse me, is that from one of our books?
No.
Oh.
I'm just showing you so you get it clearer. The buccal gingival ridge, or the buccal cervical ridge, it's not always present. And it's a mesial to distal convexity at the cervical third. A shallow concavity might be present mesially to distally in the middle third, and it's just occlusal to the buccal gingival ridge. So the dotted line here would be the buccal gingival ridge, and then occlusal to it would be a shallow concavity that might be present. Now, if you look at the tooth from the lingual surface, the mesial and distal surface taper towards the lingual, and portions of the mesial and distal surfaces, they can be seen from the lingual. It's smaller than the buccal surface, so the lingual surface is smaller than the buccal surface, and the mesial and distal outlines, they're similar to the same outlines that can be seen from the buccal. So the mesial lingual and the distal lingual cusps, they make up the lingual profile. And both of those cusps, they're almost equal in size. In a way, almost, but. Now when you look at it lingually, from the occlusal margin, there's a V-shaped lingual groove. So it would be right there. And the mesiolingual, distal lingual, and part of the distal cusp are visible. Now the mesiolingual and the distal lingual cusps are more pointed and higher than the buccal cusp. So that's really important to know that. When you look at it lingually, the mesiolingual, even when you look at the tooth, the mesiolingual and the distal lingual cusps are more pointed and higher than the buccal cusps. Diagram of the lingual groove. You can see how it's V-shaped. So you see that this is from the lingual view. You can see that this is the distal lingual cusp, the mesiolingual cusp. You can see how the lingual groove comes down. Now the lingual groove crosses the occlusal slightly distal to the center. And it may terminate in a lingual pit. So if I show you that on this diagram, you can see that the lingual groove, it's slightly towards the distal. So this is the distal, and this right here is the lingual groove. It's not down the middle of the tooth. It's right there. The lingual groove, it's more towards the distal of the tooth. Okay, now on this picture, which is the mesiobuccal cusp and which is the mesiolingual cusp? Which one's, what would this one be?
Since you
lingual,
can't
is it
see the other
sharper?
one, it's higher.
Wait, what did you say?
Is it sharper?
Okay, and because,
I don't know, it's everything.
why would, what stands out about the lingual?
They're higher than the buckle cusps, so you can't see
Good, so this would be the lingual or the buccal? The lingual. So you see how this would be, the lingual are always higher than the buccal, so automatically you can tell which is which. So when you're looking at it from the mesial surface, it's wider at the cervical than the occlusal, which is opposite of the buccal and lingual surfaces. So it's wider at the cervical than the occlusal from the mesial side. And the two cusps that you see, like we said, are the mesiolingual and the mesiobuccal. And there's lingual inclination. So, right here, it goes more towards the lingual. See how it's lingually inclined? It started from here and it goes more towards the lingual. Now the mesial contact area is at the junction of the occlusal and middle thirds. So let me just show you what that looks like. Area. And on the buccal outline, it's convex. And the height of contour is on the cervical third, especially if the buccogingival ridge is present. And it may have a slight concavity in the middle third.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Now looking at it from the mesial, wouldn't the cusp that's on the right be the mesial lingual and the one on the left be the mesial buccal? Because the one on the left is higher, but we're looking at it from the mesial, so one is lingual, one is buccal, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I think that's what we said, that's what we said.
Yeah, so it's,
Okay.
yeah, if you just,
That one's lingual, that one's buccal.
this is lingual, this is
Okay.
buccal.
Thank you.
Now when you're still looking at it mesially, the lingual outline, it's straight or slightly convex from the cervical margin to the height of contour in the middle third. So you can see it's straight and slightly convex. And it's quite convex occlusal to the height of contour. And the cervical margin, the CJ is straight to slightly curved occlusally. So it's more or less straight. A minor curve. Now when you look at the occlusal margin, it's concave. The mesial marginal ridges are confluent with the mesial cusp ridges of the mesiobuccal and mesiolingual cusps. And the mesial marginal groove is usually present. the occlusal margin is concave, and the mesial marginal ridges are confluent with the mesial cusp ridges of the mesial buccal and the mesial lingual cusp. And the mesial marginal groove is usually present. The mesial marginal groove. This is the mesial. This would be the mesial buccal and the mesial lingual cusp. Now for the contact, it's a flat or slightly concave area. Triangular in shape. Middle of the gingival third. And it's not as consistently deep or extensive as the mesial concavity of the first maxillary premolar. Remember how there was a deep concavity? Now we're going to look at the tooth from the distal aspect. And when you look at it distally, it's smaller than the mesial. And it's wider at the cervical than the occlusal. The buccal margin is similar to the mesial, and the concavity when present is not as evident. So this would be distal lingual, distal and distal buccal. The lingual outline is similar to the mesial, and the cervical outline is straight or curved occlusally. Now when you look at the distal surface from the occlusal outline, it's shorter than the mesial. It's concave. And the distal marginal groove bisects the distal marginal ridge. And the distal marginal groove is shorter than the mesial marginal groove. The distal marginal groove is located lingual to the center of the tooth. And the distal marginal ridge is usually more cervically located than the mesial marginal ridge. So, as you can see, the distal marginal groove is located more lingual to the tooth. It's not in the center. So, this would be the distal cusp. The distal cusp is the most prominent feature. And when you look at the tooth from the distal surface, all 5 cusps are visible. And more of the buccal surface is visible from distal because of the convergence of the buccal surface to the lingual. And the distal buccal groove is visible. So when you look at it from the distal, you see all 5 cusps, and the distal cusp is the most prominent feature. Now when you look at the tooth from the occlusal aspect, it's pentagonal outline overall. But the occlusal table is hexagonal. So out here it would be pentagonal, and then the occlusal table would be hexagonal. And the distal buccal converges towards the distal. So this would be the distal buccal cusp, and you see how it's going towards the distal. And it's wider mesial-distally than buccal-lingually. So it's wider this way than it is this way. So wider mesial-distally than buccal-lingually. And it's widest mesial-distally towards the buccal, and it's widest buccal-lingually towards the